He pressed against her and demanded, "What is your line?" "I'm a minister of the gospel." Danny's broad lips turned up at the corners as Apollo's face revealed his shock. Sensing a movement on her left, she turned her head to see that the muscular middle-aged man who'd sat wordlessly beside her all the way from Boston had lifted his head from his book and now stared at her with a startled expression in his faded blue eyes. Danny had spent a great deal of time fending men off, and it had been a relief to make the flight from Boston to Atlanta without a problem. At the same time, this particular man had puzzled her. Ordinarily, people speak when they are side by side, just inches away, even if only about superficial things. But her companion had nodded slightly as he sat down, and then had drawn a cloak of silence around himself. For the first hour, Danny paid him no attention, but as she read the flight magazine, she had studied him a bit. Watching people had become second nature to her, and she knew almost at once that this man was troubled. His unsteady hands betrayed him, and instead of reading his book, he stared blankly at the page, not turning it for 15 minutes. Although she could see only the right side of his face, she noted how the lips would tighten, and then droop, lapsing once into a tremble that he shut off by quickly biting his lower lip. His eyes were vague, but once, when he turned to take a soft drink from the flight attendant, Danny saw fear in his expression, and he blinked too rapidly. At once she sensed that her words, "I'm a minister of the gospel," had shaken him. As Danny started to speak, from her right, Apollo's big hand closed on her upper arm, and she was pulled back to face him. Irritated that she had turned away from him, Apollo shook his head. "A preacher? Hey, that's cool." He had her attention, or so he believed, and she could almost read his thoughts. "This broad's a preacher, all right, so that's what I'll work on." "I'm sort of religious myself." He nodded, and holding onto her arm firmly, began telling her a story about how he had gone to church when he was a boy. Danny looked at him, wondering how to get free of his attention. Obviously, if she was to have any opportunity to speak to the man beside the window, ordinary methods would not work. A thought flashed into her mind. At first she rejected it, but as it came back, her lips thinned and her eyes narrowed. "Ma'am," she called out as a red-haired flight attendant in a wine-colored uniform was approaching. "Could I have a cup of coffee, black, a large cup, please?" Surely I'll get it right now." As she waited for the drink, doubt flitted through Danny's mind. "Well, even if he is second cousin to a gorilla, do I have the right, Lord? After all, I don't really want to hurt him." At that moment, Apollo laid a hand on her knee and accompanied the action with crude, sensual words even a gorilla would know never to apply to a minister of the gospel. "Well, what's sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander," decided Danny stubbornly, "and I'd say this gander has it coming to him." The flight attendant arrived with the coffee. "Careful, it's hot," she warned as she handed it over. "Oh, I'll be careful." Danny nodded as she took the cup, tasting it carefully. Good. It was scalding hot. Placing the cup on the small fold-down tray before her, she half-turned in her seat, leaning as close as she could get to the flirtatious man. Her eyes widened so that they seemed enormous to Apollo, and when she whispered in a throaty voice, "Can you really get tickets for that musical?" he almost jumped out of his skin. He grinned, triumph in his greedy eyes, and lifted his right hand to touch her cheek. "Baby, you better believe it. Just you and me after the show." "Ow!" Apollo leaped out of his seat, brushing at the front of his slacks, now stained with coffee. Danny's hand had accidentally knocked over the cup as she reached to pick it up. "Oh, I'm so sorry. Let me help you," she cried as she pulled a tissue out of her bag. "Oh, sometimes I can be so clumsy." "You dumb broad." Apollo jumped to his feet, brushing at the front of his trousers and doing a jig in the aisle. His face had turned crimson, and he looked down at the brown stain spreading over the front of his cream-colored slacks. Moving toward her, he uttered a curse, and for one instant Danny thought he was going to hit her. When she repeated, "I'm so sorry," he snarled, jerked open the door of the overhead compartment,